Hello. Okay, so we didn't get to finish the Christmasaurus last term, so we're going to finish it now. Okay, so I'm gonna read it to you. Okay, I'll read it in a couple of stages so you can listen to it, so we can finish the story, and we'll start our new class book tomorrow. Okay, so what has just happened? The hunter, we thought the hunter had killed the Christmasaurus, hadn't we? But the Christmasaurus tricked the hunter, because it was actually the replica. It was Stuffy, wasn't it? It wasn't actually the Christmasaurus, it was Stuffy. No, he gasped as he gazed into two lifeless golden buttons staring up from the snow. There was now a large bullet hole in the toy dinosaur's side, and its feathery stuffing was leaking out into the Christmas morning air and blowing away in the bright breeze. But, he must be here somewhere, the hunter whined. I heard him roar with my own ears. He must still be close. And he was. As the hunter stood cursing at his misfortune, screaming manically at the wounded stuffed dinosaur on the ground, something was creeping up behind him. From the other end of the street, the crying crowd of criers quickly wiped away their tears as they saw something wonderful, something tremendous, something ferocious. It was the Christmasaurus, but he looked different from how he'd ever looked before. More dinosaur-like, protective, fierce, hungry. The hunter spun on the spot to find himself standing in the looming shadow of the Christmasaurus. He was face to face with an angry dinosaur. For the first time in his life, the hunter was being hunted. Wait, just a clock tick, the hunter said nervously as he started backing away from the approaching dinosaur. I wasn't really going to hang you on my wall. This is all just a misunderstanding. But as he spoke, he was fiddling with something behind his back. Click! It was his rifle, and it was reloaded and ready to fire again. In a flash, the hunter swung around his deadly gun and aimed it straight at the Christmasaurus's head. The hunter was fast, and before the Christmasaurus had had a chance to react, he placed his bloodshot eye on the telescopic sight and was ready to pull the trigger. He would not miss this time. But as his finger tightened, something came hurtling through the air at tremendous speed. It was a small, hard, perfectly made snowball, and it flew down the street towards the hunter with such incredible speed and accuracy there was no way he could avoid being hit. The unexpected ball of snow knocked the sniper rifle straight out of the hunter's bony fingers before he could pull the trigger. The hunter looked up just in time to see a giant set of white, glistening, razor-sharp dinosaur teeth coming towards him. Crunch! Gulp! The hunter was gone. The Christmasaurus swallowed him whole. There was nothing left of that beastly, evil man. The Christmasaurus let out a big, stinky burp that stank of pipe smoke and money, and that was the last anyone ever saw of the hunter. This is the hunter. Can you see him? The Christmasaurus. He's eaten him. Can you believe it? Okay, chapter 33. The wonderful thing about Christmas. You're alive! You're alive! William cried as he came whizzing down the street as fast as his wheelchair could whiz him. He flung his arm around the Christmasaurus's neck and gave him the biggest hug. Thank you, he said. You saved us. You came back and you saved us all. Mr. Trundle came running down the street after William, his mouth hanging open in complete shock at the sight of the Christmasaurus. Dad, this is the Christmasaurus. He's my best friend, William said. How do you do? Merry Christmas, said Mr. Trundle nervously. It's okay. He's perfectly safe. We visited the museum tonight, and he flew me all the way to the North Pole, and we met all the elves and ate magic candy cane, and, well, it's been quite an adventure, really, explained William. Where's Santa? Can you see Mr. Trundle a bit scared of meeting the Christmasaurus? Just then, Santa came flying down from the sky in his enormous sleigh and landed it in the street next to them. William, that was one incredible snowball you threw there. Perfect shape, perfect size, perfect throw, perfect timing. Well done you, Santa applauded. It wasn't me who threw that snowball, said William. Santa and Mr. Trundle looked completely puzzled. What do you mean? If it wasn't you, dear lad, then who on earth was it? Asked Santa. William hadn't actually seen who'd thrown the snowball, but there was only one person he knew who could throw something with such unbelievable accuracy. He turned his wheelchair around and pointed his finger towards that sad, un-Christmassy-looking house on the street, the only house without Christmas decorations. You can come out, Brenda. It's okay, William called. The light bush in the front garden gave a wobble, and out popped the perfect golden blonde twirls of Brenda Payne. Well, 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 who's this? I don't recall dropping into your house last night, puzzled Santa. No, you wouldn't, said Santa. You wouldn't, Santa, said William. This is Brenda Payne. She's on the other list, he whispered. Ooh, said Santa. Awkward. It's okay, Brenda said nervously as she took tiny baby steps towards them. I deserve it, she admitted, and William saw that little smile creep into the corner of her mouth as she gazed up at Santa, unable to look at anything other than the impossibly magical man in red. The Christmasaurus stomped his feet in the snow and gave Santa and William a very stern look. They both knew what he was saying. Brenda, my dear, what you have done here tonight took courage and bravery. It showed that deep down you care, that you are kind, and that you have the ability to put others first. If those aren't the sorts of deeds that get a kid on the nice list these days, then I don't know what are, said Santa warmly. You mean I'm nice? Asked Brenda, sounding more surprised than anyone. Brenda Payne, I hereby declare that you are no longer on the naughty list, bellowed Santa in a very official-sounding tone. Everyone cheered and whooped, and Brenda gave William a huge squeezy hug. Well, William, Brenda, Mr. Trundle, I think it's time for me to be going. It's Christmas morning, and I really shouldn't be parking the sleigh in the middle of the street like this. Traffic wardens don't take any Christmas holidays, you know. I put them all on the naughty list years ago, explained Santa. But how did you know how to come back? William asked the Christmasaurus. How did you know we were in danger? The Christmasaurus shook his head. I don't think that's the reason he came back, William, Santa said as the Christmasaurus moved out of the way to reveal the remains of the stuffed toy dinosaur lying on the floor. You left your toy behind in the North Pole. I think you were just trying to bring it back to you. The Christmasaurus nodded, his tongue flapping happily out of his mouth. And it's a good job too, or we might have all have ended up as heads above the hunter's fireplace, William explained, and everyone burst out with laughter at the thought. Then William noticed something red, white, and scrummy reflecting the sunlight on the floor next to Stuffy. My piece of candy cane! William cried, and scooped it up. Only something was different. Something had changed. As he turned it over in his hands, he saw that the writing that ran through it had once said his name. Now said Bob Trundle. William's eyes lit up with excitement. Does this mean? He looked hopefully up at Santa, who was smiling back down at him. That my dad is unbanished, Santa boomed with a merry laugh, and William handed over the magical piece of North Pole protection confectionery into Mr. Trundle's trembling hands. I don't know what to say, gulped Mr. Trundle with tears of happiness in his eyes. Say you'll come and visit, said Santa. Suddenly there was a loud woof from behind them. They all turned to see Growler, the hunter's dog, sitting in the snowy street, looking very lost and alone. Said Santa. I wonder if there might be some good in this dog after all. They all saw something that was different in the hound's eyes. Now that the hunter was gone, he looked happier, nicer. I wonder, Brenda, if you might be able to show him the love and kindness that you have shown here tonight, Santa said. As he spoke, the great shabby dog bounded over to Brenda, jumped up, and gave her a big, wet, happy lick across her face. Santa, do you really mean it? I can keep him, I asked Brenda excitedly. Well, I believe I owe you a present. You're on the nice list now after all. As long as you promise to give him a happy home, said Santa. Of course I will. I love him, said Brenda, and she gave Growler the first hug he'd ever had, which seemed to melt away all the rottenness inside him. The Christmasaurus let out a happy roar as William wheeled himself round so that he was face to face with his dinosaur friend. It was time to say goodbye again. You can come and visit us whenever you want to, just be sure to let Santa know first, okay? Said William, and the Christmasaurus nodded. They hugged each other, and it was one of those hugs that only best friends give. Even though they didn't know when they would see each other again, they knew that a friend is for life, not just for Christmas. Christmasaurus! Santa boomed. I do believe there's a room for a certain dinosaur up front. He pointed to an empty harness at the front of the team of magnificent reindeer. The Christmasaurus looked at the sleigh, then back at Santa with his wondrously icy blue eyes. Yes, you heard me correctly, you silly sausage. I've been flying this sleigh one man down for 30 years, or should I say one deer down. Now, do you want to pull the sleigh or not? Santa said as the Christmasaurus bounced around with excitement. Come on then, let's get you strapped up. The Christmasaurus leapt over and lined himself up, proudly in front of the magnificent reindeer. Santa strapped the enormous sleigh-belled harness over his shoulders, and a sort of warm magical tingle ran from the top of the Christmasaurus' head all the way down his blue snowflake covered back to the tip of his tail. Santa took a step back and they all admired the Christmasaurus. He wasn't a reindeer. He was still different. But he was just as magnificent, maybe even more so. "Let's go home!" Santa cried, and he jumped up into his sleigh and wound up the shiny golden gramophone for the last time. As William, Mr. Trundle, Brenda, and Growler watched the sleigh start to softly float on the music, a worried voice called out, "Brenda!" Miss Payne was scurrying towards them dressed in spotty pajamas and a flowery dressing gown, her prettiness hidden behind a look of panic and worry. "I heard noises, gunshots and roars, and when I looked, you'd gone, and—" Miss Payne froze on the spot. She'd been so worried about her daughter that she hadn't noticed the unbelievably impossible sleigh floating over the street in front of them. "Oh my!" she gasped when she saw it, completely mesmerized, entirely spellbound through and through. William saw the sparkle of tears well up in her eyes and thought that maybe, just maybe, Miss Payne's heart might have just thawed completely. "Merry Christmas!" Santa called out as Mr. Trundle, Miss Payne, William, Brenda, and her new dog watched the sleigh glide over the snowy street, pulled by 8 magnificent reindeer and a flying dinosaur to the sound of Santa's booming singing voice. As Santa glanced down from the sky above, William thought he caught a glimpse of that knowing smile he'd seen earlier that night. Suddenly, Santa pulled on the reins and the Christmasaurus made a hard turn to the right, guiding the sleigh directly over their heads. William had to spin his wheelchair around to keep sight of them, but as he did, he heard an awful familiar sound. Crunch! "That's my foot!" cried Miss Payne. Let me see. Bit like what happened in the morning at the very beginning with Brenda and William. As she jumped back, she slipped on the icy street just before she landed in a pile of snow. Mr. Trundle caught her in her arms. William was about to apologize when something stopped him. Just a feeling he got. Instead, he just watched as his dad helped Miss Payne to her feet. "Thank you," she said, looking a little embarrassed. "Don't mention it, Mr. Trundle," said Mr. Trundle. There was a funny little pause, and William noticed that since helping Miss Payne to her feet, Mr. Trundle hadn't let go of her hand. "I'm Bob Trundle," Mr. Trundle said. "I don't believe we've met." "Pamela," Miss Payne replied. "Well, Merry Christmas, Pamela," said Mr. Trundle, with the same silly tip of his invisible top hat. William rolled his eyes, but this time Miss Payne didn't ignore him or cross the street to go away. "Merry Christmas, Bob," she said, and blushed. Perhaps it was the magic of the music falling from Santa's sleigh like a blanket of snow, or maybe Mr. Trundle was feeling particularly jolly as it was Christmas. Whatever the reason, William couldn't quite believe what happened next. "Shall we?" Mr. Trundle said as he offered Miss Payne his arm to dance. "Oh, I really don't usually dance," spluttered Miss Payne nervously. "Neither do I," Mr. Trundle said with a little chuckle, which made them both laugh. She took his arm, and so for the second time that Christmas, William saw his father happily dancing in the wintry air. "This is turning to be the best Christmas ever," Brenda said as she stood next to William with her new pet. "I never want it to end." We have a look at this picture. We've got over here William and Brenda and the hound, the dog, Growler, waving up. Waving up at the Christmasaurus and the reindeer and Santa in the sleigh. And then there's Mr. Trundle and Miss Brenda's mum, Miss Payne, dancing in the street. You see? So it's turning out to be a happy ending. "That's the wonderful thing about Christmas," William said as his dad spun Miss Payne beautifully over the snow. "Every second away from last Christmas is 1 second closer to the next." That's good. That's the end of the story. So, William's wish of his dad falling in love came true as well. So his wishes from Father Christmas came true. He got to see a dinosaur and his dad fell in love, which is lovely, isn't it? Okay, so we'll start our new story tomorrow and I'll post it up onto Teams. Have a lovely evening.